This is how I painted my Astra Militarum. Hope you enjoy. So after using a straight up zenithal on this project, I began shooting Game Air 763 from Vallejo. That's desert yellow. And in the shadows I used purple ink from P3, and I thinned that with just some Vallejo airbrush thinner. Shot that into the shadows. I highlighted with 074 there, the Game Air beige. Tried to hit where the light would be coming down onto the uniform. The airbrush really helps with speeding things up. From there I jumped right into the brushing on a dark red or dark brown or reddish brown hull red 985, and got all the leather areas as well as the areas that will eventually be red. You probably want to go ahead and get the hull red on the canteen as well. I ended up doing that red as well. Went pretty fast to 957 flat red Vallejo model color. Used several different coats there. I probably went up 3 or 4 coats of this to eventually get the red that I wanted. The translucency of the red really does play well to the shadows of the hull red that I started with. As I got near the top of the color spectrum that I wanted, I started mixing more and more game ink red in. This ends up giving you a really flat finish, but it doesn't matter here because on the shoulder pads I end up doing a gloss coat and then being able to put the decals on. As I said, I went back in here and started doing the canteen, the red with that same ink and flat red. Next I went over the zenithal face with 2 coats of Reikland Flesh Shade. It's a very fast way of picking up how much a decent skin tone, especially if you have a big army to do. You don't want to spend a ton of time on it. I may have sketched in just a little bit of Vallejo ivory into the fingertips and off the tip of the nose and just kind of on the cheeks. But again, two layers of this Reikland Flesh Shade works out really well for a skin tone over armies. Moving back with all the leather items and all the black items, I ended up using 995 German Gray. It's a very dark blue. I also went over the chin strap this color as well. Later on, I believe I came back and did that with the whole red as well, though, so it's really personal choice there. Next, I went in with the Vallejo Ivory 918, and I did the gun stock and a couple of the skulls in the areas that I eventually used kind of an off-white for. Now I'm going in with the red Vallejo Game Ink and doing the wings on the helmets. It just takes a touch of this to get it into the right spot. If you see here, I'm using a pencil to go in and stencil in some, sketch in some wood grain in the ivory, and after this I'll go over it with some scale 75 ink tints wood for some of the fastest and best looking wood that you can see. Doesn't take any more work than this. Now I'm going back with some Nun oil, and I'm going to coat all the brown areas, the leather, the black leather on his belt, and his sheath for his bayonet. And I also go over the weapon as well at this point, just to reinforce the shadows. As you can see, I went over the belt as well. I want to make sure I get that leather and get some good contrast. Next up, I went in the folds of his uniform and found some areas where I could sketch in some shade with Seraphim Sepia from Citadel. After this, I'm ready to move on to some metals. But first, before I added these metals, you should know that I did use, I went ahead and varnished my Mini with Actually, I used a product called frosted glass, which sounds like it would be the last thing you would put on your Mini, but I ended up using that because it is very, very flat and it works really well. I'd really encourage you to give that a try. Right now I'm using Vallejo steel. It's a metal color and it flows really nicely, but it's a dark silver metallic. I'll also be uploading a video with how I do the decals that are put on here, as well as the base. I jumped pretty quickly here to the copper color, and I used the copper to do grenades, parts of grenades on their belt, as well as the wings on the gun emblem. Really stands out really nicely and gives just a different look to the gun instead of using the same silver and golds. Speaking of gold, the helmets were gold. So I used metal color gold here. Again, this flows so nicely, and these are the best metals on the market right now in my opinion. And I'm just going to cover the entire helmet that way. Moving up the spectrum in the silver that I used, I went to duraluminum. It's just a mid-tone metal. And I went back over kind of the mid part of the gun. I left the bottom part of the gun that darker steel color, but then I started to use this a little bit brighter at a time metal. And I used this metal as well to coat the eagle wings on the back of the canteen as well. Next up, like I said, I go straight to the chrome. This is the brightest of the metal, and I just use this for the very tops of the silver items, the top of the bayonet, and the gun barrel as well. You don't see it very well, but I actually use a black dot in the middle of the silver to show the gun barrel instead of drilling it out, and I do that on a lot of my models. Last but not least, I use the Game Ink black ink to coat the base, and I'm done. Here are some final pictures of the completed project, and I'll be sending out more videos about how I did the basing and the decals as well. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and let me know in the comments if there's anything you'd like to see or like explained. I'm only happy to help. I've been helped a lot by a lot of people, and I appreciate you watching this video. Thanks.